So for the week 2 discussion of the question is, why is genre important? I think genre is important because it can help influence the way we read scripture. Because, for example, like the Psalms versus Genesis or Revelation, like the Psalms is poetic. You don't read it literally. It has a lot of figurative language, lots of metaphors and similes and all that sorts of stuff, versus a book like Genesis or Exodus or even the Gospels. They're just more literal and you read them as a story because they're a narrative. And so like you walk through these people's lives, you see their journeys and how they encounter day-to-day stuff, and you can read it kind of like more as like comparing to like your life in a way, just because it's so much more like direct. And then like for Revelation, it's apocalyptic, and so that's more about end times, and you don't read that literally because we're not in those end times, and you read it more for like knowledge and to try to grasp the understanding. Now like for those books about apocalyptic literature, there's so many different ways to interpret it, and Christians, I think, interpret it very different ways, and I don't think one's necessarily wrong versus not wrong, but I think in different texts like that, it's easier to, in a way, misinterpret it versus like Genesis, because it's just a story and there's not a lot of like, oh, how could we see this? Further question is, why should we see God as the main character? I think when we see God as the main character, it helps us show that he is the head of our lives, and it shows his divine power and sovereignty because he is the head of our lives and he's the head of the church. And when we see scripture and realize that he is everything and he is what we should abide and listen to, it helps us submit to him more accordingly and realize like he should be our everything. He should be what we're looking to in problems. And then I think the how should you view it differently is, I think when you see scripture as so holy, then you can see that you don't need to have doubts on like, is this accurate, is it not? Because I mean, just like if Jesus is everything, he wouldn't have allowed scripture to be there if it wasn't true. And there's enough evidence and facts that it is true that we can back it up for. So then just living with that, with having no doubts, and then making God the center of our lives because we see that he is our everything. And so when we listen to that and we do that, we then can see that we should want to be more like him. We should want to abide to him, ask him for forgiveness because he made us and we are made in his image, and like all creation around us is because of him. And so when we glorify him and just like look in that presence of like, okay, God is everything, then reading scripture and just realizing that how awesome it is that like we can have a God that can do that, I just think it's really awesome.